New Aphotic Realm announcement. Submission windows for upcoming issues. Issue 10, the theme is justice. That's hard-boiled fiction with a supernatural twist. The deadline for that will be April 1st, 2020. Issue 11, the theme is kaiju, giant monsters terrorizing civilization. Deadline will be October 1st, 2020 for those stories. Issue 12, the theme is lycanthropy, which is, of course, self-explanatory. It can be any type of animorph with a bloody twist. So I guess that's werewolves and Jesus, giant, I don't know. What do people turn into? Seals? I've just got a little seal on my desk, so I thought of that. I don't know. You'll have to be more imaginative than I just was. But the deadline for lycanthropy, January 1st, 2021. Good luck to everyone submitting.
This thing, I hope you like it. Let's talk about it, yeah. Let's lose track. Losing the Plot Podcast. Losing the Plot Podcast. Losing the Plot Podcast. Talking to Leo X.
My guest this episode is Richard Slater. We talked earlier this year about the films of Harmony Korine, and then we'd started to go on a tangent about Richard Linklater, but we so enjoyed our discussion we thought we'd come back again and this time talk about the films of Richard Linklater. Specifically, I suggested that he watch Slacker, and he suggested I watch A Scanner Darkly. We'd not seen them before, so we mostly compare and contrast those two films. It was a great chat. We'll do other ones in future. Hope you enjoy listening to it. If you're a reader, writer, some sort of creative person who wants to be on the show, or if you want to tell me something about the show, you can always do so using losingtheplotpodcast@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. But that's all my intro chat. So here is my conversation with Richard Slater. How are you doing?
Good, Daddy. How about you?
I'm good, thanks. I just, when I logged into Skype, I see our last chat was 6 months ago.
Yeah. I'm in a totally new apartment at this point.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
Same city?
Same city, different area. So it's kind of a new experience here. I've lived in the city for maybe 6 years now, 5 or 6 years, but I've never lived I'm in the southwest side now, so I've never lived over here. All these new, restaurants. I mean, half the shit's closed because of COVID, but there's all these new restaurants and stores that I'll be able to check out.
That's nice. How long have you been there?
Like 3 weeks at this point. 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah.
And what prompted the move?
Oh man, did I ever tell you about how crappy our last apartment was?
Don't think so.
It was like next to a highway on-ramp. So if we looked out our windows, there was a little patch of yard and then a wall, and then on the other side of the wall was a highway on-ramp that was kind of connecting the highway to this industrial area of the city. So it was constantly being driven on by 18-wheelers, and the whole building would just like shake all the time as cars would drive by. Like, it wasn't like violently shaking, but you would hear like the glasses in the cabinet just like rattle a little bit. And then in that little patch of grass that I was just talking about separating us from the wall, there's just like rats and trash and all this other stuff. And it was just not a great situation. It seemed a lot nicer when we were looking at it than once we moved in.
Nice. And how's work going? I imagine it's been kind of up and down with coronavirus stuff. Has it changed? The
Yeah, well,
regulations been changing?
Uh, my old job of like just kind of delivering things is pretty steady because that would be what people are doing now. They're getting things brought to them instead of going out and picking them up themselves. But I've been working a little less because I've been able to get some supplemental money from the government itself.
Nice.
They kind of made this program where they were giving independent contractors a little supplemental income, and because I'm so used to living so cheaply, I don't have to work really right now or hardly at all. Like I can survive on that supplement. So I've been just kind of hanging out and writing,
Nice.
trying to use time productively. This is kind of a boon or gift. It almost feels like for me to concentrate on my creative stuff.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. No, I feel the same. I just really enjoy being at home and being quiet and thinking of creative stuff. So kind of works
Has your
out.
writing, output
It's
increased?
gone up. Yeah, it's gone up for
Yeah.
sure, I think. I didn't notice how much like just taking the bus out to the office, like having to wake up on time and then just how draining it is. Didn't notice until I don't have to do it. And then so much extra energy to pour into stuff I want to do. And I'm also kind of better at work as well because I'm always like comfy and I don't know. It's nice.
I feel like people don't really need bosses. I mean, some people, I guess, do, but as long as there's someone to just check to make sure you've done your work, I understand how organizations kind of have to, function. But as long as you're just reporting into somewhere and getting what you need to get done, like no one needs a boss really breathing down their neck. It's really just going to make them unhappy.
Hmm. Yeah,
I don't know what it was
absolutely.
like for you, but I've never really gelled with a boss personally. I don't really have problems like that.
They're always super nice here in Norway, I think for the most part. Super chill
Yeah.
work culture. Everyone's like on a level plane, like you talk to them like everyone talks to each other in the first name basis. Um everyone's pretty friendly. So it's nice. But I'm not somebody who gets told what to do easily either. I think we're definitely if I had the choice, I would definitely never be told what to do.
Well, probably because you do your job, right? No one needs to kind of tell you what to do if you're doing it.
Fair, fair. Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's true. So, so you've been watching a lot more films generally?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I watch a lot of movies to begin with, but I still kind of keep my schedule, even during all this coronavirus for the past 6 months. I still keep my schedule pretty similar. So I'll watch like a movie almost once a day, maybe once every other day. Break
Mm.
it up with some TV or something. But I save it all for the evening because I don't want to. I don't want to like derail my productivity in the middle of the day. I want to be able to work on my writing. And I'll read and just
Mm.
kind of like take care of all my errands and stuff. But yeah, I've been watching some films. How about you?
Yes, yes, a lot of stuff. It reminds me of like I don't know if you've seen that Ursula Le Guin does her like writing process in a day, and it says like after 8 p.m. I get very stupid and we don't talk about that. So it's like I
Yeah.
definitely feel like that in the evening, at which time like I would love to do something productive, but I just can't. It stops being productive. So I stayed up last night watching A Scanner Darkly to make sure that I was prepared for a chat. So yeah, like one every evening I'll watch something. Um, Not a lot of great stuff. Like I sent Possessor to you. I love that. Don't know if you've seen it yet. Um,
No. Yeah. I'm still planning on it. I've only heard great things about that movie.
I loved it for sure. I really did, and it made me think that in future we should do a Cronenberg chat. But I think I've picked both the directors for our chat so far, so it's totally up to you in the next 6 months.
I mean, oh sure, but I mean, you're saying you pick the directors, but these are people I'm interested in. It's not like I'm doing Leo a favor over here, like
Yeah,
watching some
yeah,
movie. So, yeah, especially when we were talking 6 months ago about Harmony Korine. It's like this is one of my favorite filmmakers, so it was a treat to revisit the movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I don't discuss films with so many people either. So it's really I don't share this taste with that many people. So it's really nice for me to um yeah. So tell me
What about
about
those?
go for it, go
What
for it.
about? Yeah, I was gonna say, what about those people you've been making films with? You've been doing your own short films. I mean, these people have to be interested in movies too. I mean, maybe not at the
Yeah.
same time. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. I don't know. And we have a lot of fun making stuff, but we all have very different tastes. But I mean, that can be good as well, right? To find out other stuff.
I guess until it starts breaking you all apart because everyone's like, I got to, pursue my idea. I've got the right idea. I don't know how the
Hmm.
kind of dynamic of your group, but
Well, like
there's too many kitchen thing.
for me, and I think this ties into Linklater, who is like a huge inspiration for me, is that naturally I think it's all about the writing quality for me first. And I think that filmmakers typically come from the angle of like, oh, this will look beautiful. I wonder why I can put this in my film, rather than the other way around, which is to write something and then find where those places will go. Um, so I think that's what makes me like that defines my taste when it comes to making films. Is like as long as the story is strong, I barely care about the quality of the image actually. Like the less people are acting, the better. Uh, I think.
Ah,
And this
yeah.
goes against the kind of people who come to my club who are like, one woman is like a professionally trained theater person, and she was talking about like how to develop characters and to wear specific clothing to keep your like to separate yourself from them. Whereas I want like as little separation as possible. I want it just to look like reality,
Yeah.
almost. I
Is
don't
that
know.
is that kind of like why you connected with Slacker? I
Yes,
mean,
yes, definitely. Yeah. And I wanted to talk to you about that. Like, did you watch it?
yeah, I watched it last night.
Okay,
It was my
cool.
first time watching it too, so this was a new experience here.
Yeah. What did you think of it?
I thought it was very interesting. Like, and there's a kind of amateur quality definitely to the film. But I think as an idea and watching it kind of realize and blossom, it's just kind of. I was sitting there with my girlfriend, and we were, she was watching it with me. She didn't really care for the movie, but I liked it a lot.
Hmm.
And I found that there was this almost, I don't like hypnotic nature to the way the movie was kind of unfolding. Like, not, not that it was putting me to sleep, but it was making me feel relaxed to just like peek in at these people, even though their conversations are all kind of like about paranoia and UFOs and conspiracies and weird shit. Um, but just the nature of how the film was created and
Mhm.
plays out, I found very kind of peaceful in a way.
Yeah, definitely. I have to say that like when I started watching it, like it made me a little mad at first in a way that I was just like, oh my god. First of all, I was like, who cares? Because like
Yeah.
it's the director himself for like 9 minutes talking about like his dreams and his like all of his ideas rambling onto this taxi driver. I was like, oh my god, who cares? And also like this is so trivial. I was almost like, how dare you be so like impractical person, and then like the structure itself is so like impractical and it's so like not what is done. And that's very much like what I get a lot in my film club is I'm like, this is what I'm going to do, point the camera here, blah blah blah, and they're like, no, but you should have it over your shoulder and the light should be there because like that's how they do it in Hollywood. And I'm like, I don't care. Like I just want it done. Like give it a shot. Maybe we're onto something here, maybe not, try it out, which I think is very much how we write as well, right?
Yeah. In general, it's kind of like a seat of your pants kind of thing, And what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. So
Good
you
one,
got to
yeah.
you got to stick yourself in the situation to be like, how do I get out of it? How do I
Yeah,
figure this out? Time is
yeah.
now. I don't have time to not to think about it any longer.
But like what I love about this film is it is an ode to, I guess, frivolity in a way, because these people like are not at all concerned with, they're almost completely, their culture's completely detached from the mainstream. and they're obsessed with stuff that like few people care about, and like they won't be remembered or acknowledged for the way that they live their lives. It's just so weird, but like that lifestyle is lauded in the film.
Yeah, and there's a sort of universal, or at least still at this point, appeal to it, because I know this is kind of a Gen X film, so slightly before my time. I'm kind of like on that cusp age between the two generations. But you know, Austin in 1990 could basically be Portland in 2020. Like it is
Right.
very much the way it looks, the way kind of people just are hanging out and have their little projects they might be working on in their yard, and it doesn't really seem like anyone's working too hard or really doing anything at all. You know, it's just it's very much still where I think we are as a culture, or at least like that 20 something age.
Mm-hmm.
Basically everyone in this movie is under 30. I would say it's basically they're all between graduating college, I'd say, and doing literally anything else with their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Because that was going to be my question to you, whether or not you knew people like this, because I very much like never hung out in circles with people like this at all, which I think is why I find it fascinating as well.
No, that's almost everyone I know is like this. I live in a basically a bohemian city with a bunch of, and all my friends are other artists and writers and stuff. So it's very much a lot of when I get together with my friends, we have conversations sort of like how we have now, where we just kind of we'll end up dissecting something or within the pop culture, or talking about what we're working on ourselves, which you know art in a lot of ways kind of seems like a frivolous answer to that what should I do with my life question, even though if you think about it a little deeper, it's not at all, because it's that kind of that connective tissue between the emotional you know ness of generations and all that. But as an artist yourself, you're like, I mean, at least me, half the time I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what is the point of this? I'm writing my story going, who is this helping? Like, who is this for? And I'm wondering if that ever goes away, even when you kind of start affecting or reaching larger and larger audiences. I'm wondering if there's
Mm.
still that kind of question of what am I doing here?
I think there must be, and I think that like your fiction even contains that message, because I think about some of your stories, like they take on death, they take on like existential questions, and like are placed in like the grandest timeline of things, which no matter how big your achievements are, is nothing essentially. Because I kind of feel that like one thing I think I've well, this is what I've learned, I guess, in recent years. I also definitely see this reflected in Linklater's films, is that like, yes, okay, I've never hung out with people like the people in Slacker or in like any of his films, because this is like his genre of person, but they all deal with the same like human stuff that we all have to deal with, like divorce and grieving and all the stuff that just a human goes through. And those things are like so much more impactful than the things that make us different, you know?
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. He's got such a weird career too, because you can see how this movie is kind of a mission statement for him, and it kind of bleeds into at least everything I've seen from him in certain ways. And he's kind of taken a weird approach in doing commercial films and big studio movies, along with these little strange indie movies that are kind of these, I don't want to say plotless, but they just kind of roll along, and they're more about the philosophy of the thing
Mm-hmm.
than an actual story with a narrative arc.
Yeah. I think he also represents, like, when he is doing his own thing and not these commercial things, like a total triumph of a self-developed style, because like there's so many things he does that should not be done if you're taking it from a very systematic approach, which I don't think is how you really make anything of value. You basically have to go off first principles of like, what do I want to see, or how do I think this should unfold, with no I mean, I've seen you post about this before, how, you know, every time you start a new story, you're like, what the hell am I doing? It's like ground zero again.
Yeah. You know, I read a book recently by Robert Rodriguez. Are you familiar with Robert? Okay.
I read that recently as well. Yeah, same one.
Yeah, the Rebel Without a Crew.
Yeah.
Like, and it's very much kind of what you're saying, where he's just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to get a camera. I know I love movies, and I know I'm going to figure this out,
Yeah.
and I'm going to point it at the thing, and I'm going to like get to the place, and I'm going to make it work. And you know, I found that book to be super inspiring. He talks a lot about the technical aspects of making a movie, which is all completely outdated at this point. It was like in the early 90s when he was talking about
home
what camera
videotapes and stuff. Yeah.
and how he procured it and how he edited it. It's all irrelevant at this point. But the kind of exuberance you have to approach creating art, and the malleability you have to have in your mind to be able to adapt to things or think on the fly. And I don't know, just like something to be said for having your vision, putting your head down, and just plowing straight forward. And that's kind of what Rodriguez was talking about in that book. He's like, I'm going to make this movie, and I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to get it produced, and and everyone's going to see it. And he just did, like, you know, just by not taking no for an answer, by working super hard, and by having an actual vision that he wanted to express.
And I think that like art and films, when you take that approach, it's so the opposite of what everyone tells you to do. I gave a presentation to my club on that book that I never ended up putting on the YouTube channel because I stole so much from the book that I thought I can't really just post this online. But yeah, essentially that message. I mean, like, so many people are going, no, you can't do that. You can't do it that way. You'll never get it done for that money. And finally he gets it done for that money, and they're like, how did you do that? Like, people have been in the industry for so long are asking him how he did things, because he refused to do it their way, because he approached it as if it had never been done before. And I think that if you're going to make anything, you have to approach it that way, because surely you must have something original to contribute, be it like in the form of structure or voice or dialogue or something original that people haven't seen. And if you get that out by approaching it as if there are no rules, because I don't really think there are.
Yeah, and I think that's where Slacker kind of, why it has this cult status and why people are still talking about it today. And this guy has a career still today, because while the movie, you know, might not have the best acting in it, and a lot of these people don't even seem like actors, it just seem like people grabbed off the street or his friends. And there's some interesting camera work, but a lot of times he's just a point and shoot shot. You know, he's just, let me get the two people in frame and have a talk. So while these things might seem like a detriment, I feel like people were connecting on this with such a level, because it was so fresh that it kind of influenced a whole, like all of movies kind of after it. Like, you have something like Clerks that Kevin Smith made a couple of years after this, which is basically the same movie, just leaning a little harder into the comedy and a little more refined version of it. So, you know, and then at least for people of my generation, like, Clerks is one of those those Hallmark movies that I was just like, oh, like, you can make movies where people just talk about Star Wars the entire time and fuck around, and it's just your friends are in it, and anyone can do this.
Yeah, I find that so liberating, and I definitely believe that anyone can make art, for sure. Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, now that you've seen Slacker, like, how did it relate to like other films of Linklaters that you've seen?
Well, that there's like that. It's hard to say for certain movies, because there's stuff like School of Rock, which is a studio job essentially. But movies like Dazed and Confused, or even A Scanner Darkly, which we're going to talk about a little bit too,
Hmm.
that kind of like, it's about like people, right? More than plot. And it's about these weird kind of side conversations that they have that is revealing their character. So instead of focusing strongly on any particular like plot point, any progression, the progression happens because people are trying to figure out a way to relate to each other. And then there's also, like in Slacker, everyone has these kind of paranoid talking points and conspiracy things. That kind of has carried through, I think, a lot of his work too. I think that's kind of where he might be as a person himself, where he's just like, you know what, I don't trust the government and I don't trust anybody.
Yeah, there's you can watch like the director's commentary of Slacker, which I did at one point, and he's like, I think he does start to talk over the people talking in it, and he's like, yeah, this is basically me. Like, I think voting is just symbolic, and they already know who's going to win already and stuff. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I think
that was the point. That was that conversation specifically. The guy talking about them counting the votes and how people don't vote, like, and they're just kind of chilling on the couch. I'm like, that's Portland right now. Like with the American presidential election just happened. Just to put this in context, last week, and there's all these disputes of who won and whatever, and protests everywhere. And it's basically that is kind of the sentiment floating around where people are like, what is voting and how is it even matter? There's always this,
yeah.
if there's going to be all this contest and all this contesting going on, um, with the election, when it seems clear to certain people who the winner is, like, what is the point of even participating in this system? And I think that's where people were before and where they're going to end up again after this election.
I just have you seen? Oh, this is like a tangent. Have you seen Michael Moore's latest film, the one about
Mm,
Trump?
no, oh, no, which was that?
It's called Fahrenheit 11/9.
Oh yeah, I did. Actually I went to the theater and saw that. I think that was last year.
Okay, yeah. Was
Yeah,
it last year? Okay, yeah.
yeah, yeah. It
Hmm.
was it was interesting. I you know Michael Moore's, I think, pretty interesting filmmaker himself. Obviously, he has an agenda that he's trying to express, which I think a lot of people who don't like him go, "This is biased filmmaking." Well, yeah, of course it is. He's making a movie. Like he's
Yeah.
not going this. He has a point of view he's trying to express, but it was less of a takedown of Trump, I thought, and more of kind of a takedown of the way voting and the entire system works. And I think
Mm.
a lot of people actually watched the movie, even Trump supporters, they might have been like, "Oh, yeah, this makes sense. I get where he's coming from. Yeah, the system is fucked."
Yeah, yeah. It's like more of a takedown of corporate Democrats and how they kind of smugly thought they could pick the person without consulting the people voting for these people. So yeah, no, I found it was super interesting. Um, but yeah, no, like she mentioned A Scanner Darkly. Like when I watched it, I was like, oh my god, these characters are could have been in Slacker. It's like
Yeah,
the same thing except sci-fi version. But is this like a favorite film of yours? Did you read the book? What do you think of
I've
it?
never read this book. I've actually never read a Philip K. Dick book, which might be,
I
I
would
guess,
I wouldn't
sacrilegious.
bother actually.
Oh
I,
yeah,
I I tried to read A Scanner Darkly so I could watch the film, and I was like, I can't get through this. I don't actually like his writing very much. So I was glad to see the film because I was like, oh, is that the story he was trying to tell me? Okay, that's pretty cool. But I'm not a
yeah.
fan
A
of his
lot of
writing.
the film adaptations are really great when they kind of take his idea and I think filter it differently. I don't know if I would connect with the writing either. Sometimes these more classic genre writers, they get a little like H.P. Lovecraft and stuff. Like the ideas, I think, are a lot better than the execution of what he was doing because I
Oh
try to
yeah.
read it each that story and I'm just like all the esoteric language and the way it's constructed. I'm like, just tell me what's happening. Like yes, okay, there's mountains and madness and cool, but like, what is actually happening?
Yeah. While you're really, really, really horrified by whatever it is, what is it? Yeah, I tried to read Edgar Allan Poe for the first time recently as well. I was like, what the hell is this? Honestly, I couldn't. I had to give up.
Oh wow.
But yeah, I think Philip K. Dick was on drugs a lot of his own life and writing very quickly for money, I think. And both of those things show in his prose, really. It's like very dry, not terribly, doesn't really engage your imagination. Um,
Yeah.
so, so I'm not a fan of that, but I did like the film. Um, and I think
Yeah.
it was in the right hands as well for like these characters to be treated compassionately. Um, and again, something that's like super maybe prescient in terms of what's going on in America, because there wasn't like I don't know if there was like a war on drugs in the 60s or whenever that book was written, I think early 70s.
Yeah, I think it was in the '70s sometime.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's. I wish I knew a little bit more about the book because I feel like it is a faithful adaptation of the idea, but I don't. He probably was not landing in the same kind of space as Philip K. Dick was in the way he was kind of conveying these characters and how we relate to them. And I think it's because like I was just saying, I could see Slacker all up in this movie. I could see that kind of mindset in there. So I don't. Maybe that's what attracted him to the Dick book to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was the other way around. And he's not like, let me figure out how to take this guy's work and make it into my vision. But he's like, my vision is actually this guy's vision
Mm-hmm.
too.
I think so. I think they're very like Slacker-esque characters, and I think that might have been why I found reading the book quite tough. Is it is this kind of these huge pontifications that they go on that are just kind of random little paranoid fantasies of
Yeah.
theirs with no apparent purpose. Although I thought that Robert Downey Jr. did great at that. I don't typically like him in things, but he at one point in his life must have been like that character, I think.
Yeah, I think this was kind of in his post drug days, but before he was Iron Man. So there was this.
Yeah.
He did this. He had a little era of a couple of years where he did all these really great indie films, where he was just doing phenomenal acting. Probably some of the best he's ever done. And
Mm.
this is like right in there. And I watched this. I didn't watch it again, just for this podcast because I watched it about a year ago.
Yeah.
But when I watched it then, I was so blown away by his performance. I was just like, he is so interesting and magnetic. And this is a movie filled with movie stars, big personality kind of movie stars. Woody Harrelson's there and Keanu Reeves, but he's just stealing every scene he's in.
Yeah, for sure. When he goes in to report to the who are they? I don't know, the secret agents or whatever branch they're supposed to be part of, and he's always wearing this beret and like, but totally playing it seriously. And you just buy it. You're like, okay, that's okay, cool. Guy in a beret. Nothing weird here.
Do you think that character then was Richard Linklater's kind of mouthpiece? Because you said when you were watching the director's cut for Slacker, he's like, oh yeah, this is basically just what I think.
Yeah,
Do you think he that character to filter all his kind of weird ideas about the world and how people relate to each other?
I wonder. I can't see because I didn't make it through the book. I can't quite recall like what they were discussing, but I'm pretty sure there are those kinds of discussion. Like it opens with the guy who's got the bugs all over him, and the book also opens like that. And then they do the scene where they show off the scrambler suit, I think it's called. So it's pretty faithful, I think. And all those characters are in the book and do pretty much what they do in the book as well. So it's probably faithful to the text, along with a bit of Linklater and a lot of Robert Downey Jr. himself, working through what he went through, I suppose.
Do you think the animation hindered this film from being a big success. I mean, I think it's great. I
Oh,
think the movie itself lends itself to this animation. It kind of makes everything amorphous and weird and
yeah.
surreal, like you're on drugs yourself, maybe,
Yes,
kind of tripping out.
definitely.
But I know the movie didn't do very well in the theaters, even though I find this to be the perfect union of that slacker-esque indie filmmaking with a more Hollywood sensibility of a traditional style with movie stars and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But it didn't really hit. If people saw this, it was probably because they rented it and because they liked Keanu Reeves or something.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think it must have been the art style because this was like it's early 2000s when you had like Minority Report. When did that come out? I think early 2000s as well. So you've got like big blockbuster Philip K. Dick adaptations, and this comes out also around that time. They could have
Yeah.
marketed it in that style, but it isn't like that at all. It's a totally different film. Um, yeah, more power to them for committing to that style, and also like never really using it again as well, which I think makes the film even more unique as time goes on because you don't see films that look like that anymore, to my
Yeah, I
knowledge.
think he did it in that movie Waking Life, which is
Yes,
what I think was an earlier film. So this was kind of, I think, a refinement essentially of that rotoscoping, I think it's called, when you draw over the film.
something
Um,
like that. Yeah, yeah.
but like you know, I haven't seen Waking Life in a very long time, but this was like a much clearer version of that, much cleaner looking. There's a lot more going on with the backgrounds and the way things are kind of blending into each other. The actors look like themselves.
Mhm.
Like there's no mistaking which actor you're looking at because it's an animation. It's very much, yeah. It's like I don't want to say it's photoreal because it's not, but because it's got that impressionistic quality to it. It's just, yeah, surreal. I guess it's the only way to describe it. It's just like everything twisted in a bit of a funhouse way.
Mhm.
And it really matches the mindset of the characters on this drug. What was it called? Substance D or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, so it kind of matches where these people would be in their minds, where the world is this sort of cartoony version of itself, where things are twisted in ways that they're not supposed to look.
Yeah, definitely. And also I think yeah, because of the way it's drawn, it does kind of feel kind of switches between 2D and 3D and the perspective is always just a little off. So sometimes the rooms kind of get squeezed and pulled back a little bit, which I think it must be like if you're on drugs, the kind of drugs that they're taking in the film. So it does really work. Um and also I think like it's faithful to the plot, which just kind of to me it just seemed to jump into the story. I didn't really feel like there was a proper intro or anything. It's just like here he is, he's living with these people. What?
Yeah, it's a little disorienting at first, but like by the middle of the movie, I think you're kind of on board with what's going on. Like,
Yeah.
and maybe that is part of its commercial, I don't know, failure as well. Um, just how much the audience has to buy in and not be kind of have their hand held and be like, here's the world, let me show you every little thing in order. It's like, no, you're in the world. You've already been immersed in the world. Like Keanu Reeves is already living with these people. He's already undercover. He's
Yeah.
already so deep into his addiction himself. Like you're not getting whisked away. You're already taken by the time you start.
Hmm. It's true, even when it comes to a bit towards the end, like no spoilers, but there's a plot twist when somebody takes off their scrambler suit thing. And I was just like, is that is that really happening? Or is this like is somebody hallucinating that this is happening? Like I couldn't even figure out if that was happening in the plot or if it was, just invented. Um, so it's a very disorienting film. I think that probably has something to do with it, for sure. Um, but do you think Waking Life is worth watching?
Yeah, it's kind of, from what I remember, it's kind of more like Slacker. It kind of just follows little vignettes of people around, but then they do this kind of animation thing over it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, if you're into the way this movie looked and you like Slacker, I would go back and check that out.
Cool. But I think of Linklater's films, is Bernie the one you've seen the most?
Yeah, I don't know what it is about that movie. Maybe this is just kind of the Linklater thing too, where I find it very soothing to watch that film, even though it's a true crime documentary essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I find it super just like enjoyable. It's just a very relaxing way to present what is essentially a murder.
Yeah, is it in Texas?
Mm-hmm.
It is in Texas. Okay, yeah. Like he has such a love of those people and like local characters that the thing is you pointed out, like he has local people just playing parts in the parts where the actors are in it as well, and they don't look out of place because the world is so well constructed and appreciated. um I think, yeah, like watching his films is a bit like I Love Texas, hang out in it for a bit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, especially with Bernie, it's so seamless between the quote unquote local characters and the actual actors because Matthew McConaughey and Jack Black are in it. Um, but I didn't even know those were real people until the first time I watched it, until the credits were rolled. I thought it was just kind of like they were using this weird style to just tell this story, but those were the real people involved doing real talking heads with the Jack Black and Shirley MacLaine doing the reenactment aspects of it. And I was just like, oh, these people, if you point a camera at these people and shoot it like a movie, they look like they were cast as like they're just actors themselves because they're such big characters. And you get the feeling that this small town is just full of characters and has such a weird kind of insular life to it that it's its own culture kind of
Mhm.
bubbled by itself, which I don't want to. I don't know if we want to spoil the ending of how Bernie plays out too. It's a true crime, so it's not like there's no record of how this film ends. But it it makes sense the way that people react to this crime, considering how they act to each other and how their world is presented in the film.
Mhm. Maybe that's why Linklater films are so relaxing, is like because of his love of like every like ordinary people, maybe you feel like you matter more when you're watching it because a lot of the time it's just like, should I be doing this to be better at that, and so on. But his films are always very much about appreciating the struggles that all of us go through. I think that like more than any director, I feel like he approaches the toughest truths about what it means just to be alive, but also does it in such a very compassionate way. It's like, hey, it's okay, it's worth being here, but like these bad things happen, and you got to think about this sometimes.
Yeah. Would you consider him to be an auteur? Like, we were just talking about Wes Anderson a little earlier. How
Yeah.
this is a guy whose stamp is on every single frame and every single piece of dialogue, and there's nothing involved in a film where he's not deeply entrenched into it.
Hmm.
Do you kind of get that impression from Linklater? Because I kind of feel that he's either like, let me put the camera down and see what happens and let life play out, but then there's also this kind of uniqueness to it that I'm like, I don't know if other people are able to capture this. And I don't know what the mad vision he has behind the camera and how much that's actually influencing what's happening in front of it.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I definitely think he is, and I think that like the stamp that he puts on it must just be like the mood he creates as a person on set in order to make that style and that voice come through everything he does. Because like the best example I think of is I don't know if you like Cassavetes, John Cassavetes
Uh,
films.
yeah, I'm not super familiar with all of them.
Okay,
So
no worries. But like he like you definitely know you're watching one of his films when you're watching one of his. And apparently, when he passed away, he left about 50 I think 40 like unproduced screenplays that he'd written in his lifetime that, like, as far as I know, nobody's making into films. But I figured, like, what's the point? Because without him, you're not going to make a Cassavetes film. And so I think the same is true of Linklater, is that, like, if you took his scripts and gave it to somebody else, you're not going to capture that mood. You know, that's that can't be taught and that can't be replicated by somebody else. It's probably a good definition of it. Yeah.
You kind of got that with Kubrick and Spielberg when they did AI, because I think Kubrick had passed away before he was able to get deep into the production of the movie. So Spielberg took his script and made it his own, and like you could see both their thumbprints on it. Like, you're like, oh, this is clearly a Kubrick script, and this is clearly a Steven Spielberg directed film, but without them kind of following through, I think, all the way, like from the beginning to the end, it doesn't really have the same kind of impact as it will. Like, people don't watch AI and go, oh, this is Kubrick's unproduced masterpiece. They go, oh yeah, that was a movie. Did you see The Shining though? That movie is amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a long time since I saw that one. I just remember it being really, really long. And be like, oh my god! And then he goes underwater at some point. I'm like, right, it's got to end now. And then he's just hanging out there for a few 100 years or something. You're like, Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah, it's probably not a good. It's probably not a good indicator that you're enjoying a film if you're like, yeah, all I remember is it's long.
But who are some other authors to you? Kubrick,
I mean,
you mentioned.
And Wes Anderson, we just mentioned.
Cronenberg, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, there's almost no mistaking a Cronenberg movie, or like a Coen Brothers.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Just like any person who has a vision, and that there's no mistaking a Coen Brothers movie. Like when you watch it, even there's a TV show for Fargo, which just had gone for 4 seasons, and they're not directly involved with it, but like they're not directly involved in how, like, they're not directing it themselves. I think they're producers, and obviously it's their idea, but the TV show looks like one of their movies. Whoever is behind that is just like, I'm going to kind of continue exactly what these guys were doing in the same way that they were doing it. So it very much is like someone taking someone else's vision instead of focusing on the idea and going, I'm going to do my own thing with it. They're like, I have to be faithful to what these guys see in movies and how they like to portray things and how they like to show it. I think too, though, writers connect with that mindset, because when you are writing a story, you're essentially taking every role if it were a film, right? You are the director, or the screenwriter, you are all the actors, you are the cinematographer. It's all in your head playing out the way you want it to play, and you're doing your best to get it on a piece of paper. And I think that's why so many writers, when they talk about a writer voice, like that is the way that is their auteurness, and it is kind of just built into being a writer yourself, at least a prose writer.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, it's not, I haven't been making films for very long at all, but I definitely feel like there's something about a specific mood that I can bring to group dynamic that it seems to be missing when I'm not there. And I think that's the asset, isn't it? It's like the thing that only you can bring to it. And my mood is like, just chill out, man. Just calm down. Yeah. It's okay. Give it a go. See if it works. Because I think, having written for so long, first of all, I'm like, well, I have to write without caring if it'll ever transpire into anything, because I've written stuff that I thought was very good and it goes out and some people agree, sometimes they don't, sometimes it gets published, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it gets big publications, sometimes not. And like at each stage it gets, no matter how far you think it gets, then eventually it stops, and then you just got to make something else, right? I don't really know how else to describe it. But when you think of movies, or when you think about like somebody recording you, you're like, oh my god, a permanent record of this, and I'm like, trust me, it's as if nobody's watching. It's okay, you know. So
I think to get to that auteur place where you're not really like they work with a lot of these directors work within the studio system. That's how they get financing and stuff. But they very much are kind of given this free reign to get their vision out there. And I think you have to start the way Linklater started here, by making something that breaks the mold in a successful way and has something interesting to say, so that the people with the money who may not be as creative can go, oh, the concept works. Like he made this movie for, I don't know how much he Slacker cost. I can't imagine it very much. Probably just whatever he spent on the film, like the actual cost of the film
it's
itself.
About seven to $10,000, something like Mariachi, same thing, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, so if they go, he could do this with $10,000. You know, someone with a little bit more money goes, let's give him $100,000 and see what he can do. And he made, I don't know what his next movie was, Dazed and Confused, which is yeah, a little along the same lines, a kind of hangout movie where people are just kind of espousing philosophy, a day in the life of whatever these characters are. And then that movie is super successful. And then they go, oh, let's give him, I don't know, $5 million. Let's give him $10 million. Let's see what he can keep doing. And I think for all of these directors that you could say that they are able to put their stamp on a movie and make it uniquely theirs, I think they all have that in common, where they came up that way. They took the steps up the ladder instead of going to film school and then getting hired by Universal to direct Ant-Man or something. Like they took these small steps and had to prove themselves over and over and over again, to the point where, you know, when Wes Anderson goes, give me $50 million and I'm going to make a black and white movie starring Willem Dafoe and Bill Murray, you know, and or something. And people are just like, yeah, sure. You know, it'll make money. You're great.
Yeah. It's yeah, it can't be taught, right? I mean, you think about what you think about what Linklater brings to Slacker, and it's like, it's all the people that he knows, it's all the connections he's made. It's what he sees in these people. Because, like I say, I don't think I would have given them the time of day if they weren't put on the screen like for a set amount of time and I was going to sit and watch them. Like, if the guy came up to me and started talking like that, I'd be like, sorry, no spare change, like run away. So
yeah, that dude in Slacker who follows the dude out of the coffee shop and he's just like rambling at him for 10 minutes or so about, what was he talking about? UFOs or something? Or no, the Kennedys. I don't know what the hell he was talking about, but it was. I'm like, that guy is so patient telling this man not to fuck off right now.
So I remembered what Linklater said about that scene in the director's. It was something like, the guy who's listening to him asked, like, should I be judging this guy? And Linklater was like, no, it's for the viewer to judge him. Like, you just act as if this is fine. I thought that was really interesting, because I had wondered that watching that. Like, what are we supposed to think of this guy? What are we supposed to think about this being presented to us? And I think it's like, well, as Linklater said later, is like there's something admirable about the way these people lived their lives. Clearly he sees that because he's dedicated his whole career to giving them a voice.
It's pretty interesting how he was told that guy to basically not react to him, because the way the movie's set up with the vignettes, like that guy would have been the main character of the vignette before, and then he just becomes a side character in the next one, you know, or vice versa. But like, people go from having the focus on them to having just being there, while the focus just shifts to someone else, and it's really weirdly naturalistic. It's like very natural the way that
Hmm.
the movie is unfolding. Um, Even though sometimes some really silly things happen too. The lady coming up trying to sell the Madonna pap smear is like
So
my favorite
random.
part of
So...
the
Sakone, she's like piece of the rock god or something. It's so random.
movie. So pubic hair out of
It's so random. My favorite bit was what is it the woman said that you should quit attacking women. I should know I'm a medical doctor. She just says it like so many times.
Yeah.
So random.
It was
Which
another one of those moments where I was like, this guy's very patient sitting here in this diner while this woman just keeps ranting at him,
again,
repeating this.
I think yeah, something that happened to Linklater. The woman started just saying that to him a lot, which I think is really funny. Um, but it's really yeah, I think that is like his flair for like identifying a local character is what it makes you feel that like wherever you are in the world, there must be some importance to it if you just spent a bit more time looking at it, which I think is not my natural way of thinking at all.
Because it is kind of showing you that the small moments and the inconsequential moments are actually important moments that deserve their own attention. And it makes the fact that I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to the supermarket and I might interact with a person for 2 minutes, but that is its own little moment of time and its own little movie in the grander scheme of everything. Uh, and I'm a part of it too, and I'm a part of the world and how everything is just connected in this weird way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really lovely way of seeing things. I think that is like I know Boyhood is like quite a commitment, but I think that like if you do end up giving it a chance, you would like it for that reason because it's very much like an ordinary teens experience and giving that value and not noticing the flow of time and yet nothing's changing and everything's changing at the same time. It captures that really well, and again just making it seem like whoever you are, that's important.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's kind of beautiful in a way.
It really is, and I love the before trilogy as well because I feel like I've never seen. I mean, you know what it's like when you're like early in a relationship and you're having huge conversations with somebody that maybe you've never had with anybody else. I've never seen that private, intimate experience that we must all, lots of us share, put on a screen so well. And like I love that. That's just like my favorite time in life. And it's two random people who happen to connect and have this huge connection just because they spend enough time talking to one another. And later it gets kind of dark in that it points out, I guess, there isn't one person for everyone, right? And I think that's very much explored in these films. But I also find it beautiful that two people who spend enough time together can make a beautiful, unique connection. It just makes the world seem like a much nicer place if that's possible,
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's somehow saying we're all unique and yet we're all the same at the same time, which is like
Yeah.
a really weird sentiment to try and express.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, I think that's might be his kind of Linklater specifically, his kind of overall statement as an artist of what he's trying to express to the world is, you know, big and small, we're all kind of following the same path through life, and we're all going to have little moments where beauty or terror or whatever shine through, and we're all going to have this in common, essentially. And it's going to be, but our situation is very unique to ourselves, but it's in common with everybody else's
Yeah.
situation. That makes sense. Like everyone's going to fall in love. Maybe not everyone, but you know what I'm saying. Like it's a common human experience to
Yeah.
enter a relationship, feel a connection to another person. But at the same time, the particulars and the minutia of that moment are not going to be similar for any two people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's specific and universal, like you say, which is a huge theme in literature as well. I think that Linklater, somebody who can call me out on this, because I don't know that much about cinema, but I think he's is the best example of that being explored in cinema. Something that is done in like there are any kind of like big maximalist novels about like one day that is expanded to reveal universe or whatever. But yeah, he does that very well. So I think what's successful about these chats is that we pick a director, we pick one film that like I've never seen before, one film that you've never seen before of that director, and we can discuss and compare them.
Yeah. Dude, this is, I love too having this kind of talk because it really helps shine more light on something I'm already interested in. Getting another perspective on it is really enlightening and interesting, you know?
No, I was really, go for it.
I was going to say, especially we might connect with different things in the same film. So it is very much a kind of handshake of a conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And no, I was really looking forward to this, like more than my typical podcast episodes as well, because we had such a lovely chat last time, and it's like sharing passion about something pretty unique. So no, I loved it. We'll keep in touch and do another one, but you have a lot of stuff that you've been working on at the moment. You've been spending all weekend talking to people, it sounds like.
Yeah, I've been doing podcasts all weekend. I don't know when you're planning on releasing this exactly, but I edited a book with another writer called Brian Asman. We kind of grabbed a bunch of our favorite Bizarro writers or people who write Bizarro, and we had them write essentially porn parodies of famous literary works. So there's like porn parodies of 1984 and porn parody of Emily Dickinson poems and of the Clockwork Orange is in there. Just like taking something that is kind of revered for people who like literature, something they would teach you in college, and just taking the piss out of it and being really silly and irreverent. It's called Boinking Bizarro, essentially. So it's a anthology of, we call it weird parodies because they're not all necessarily porn. But that was kind of our jumping off point with the idea. And it's ridiculous. And I've been trying to get people to, raise the word and get people to hop on board, pre-order a copy because it comes out December 1st.
December 1st, okay. Yeah. I think this will be out after that, but I will still make sure all the links are in and everything.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The book will still be around. It doesn't disappear.
Oh no. And also I saw you've got more unnerving articles in the latest issue.
Yeah, those have been fun. It's I feel a lot of people have been leaning into the fact that I like movies by like us having this chat, and Eddie Generous, who runs Unnerving, has given me the opportunity to write these comedy articles for his magazine where I essentially, the article is a conversation between me and a famous director where I start pitching them a movie, and it's usually some ridiculous version of something they've already made. So like the example I was using the other day was there's in a column where I'm talking to Ari Aster, who made Hereditary and Midsommar. And so I pitched to him a version of Midsommar, but with the Griswolds from those National Lampoon Vacation movies. So it's National Lampoon Scandinavian Vacation. So I take Clark Griswold and his family and stick them in the Midsommar village and kind of see how they essentially get killed. movie plays out.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of shit like that. It's called Dangerous Failed Film Pitches, and it's just me pitching ridiculous ideas to famous directors. It's all made up, obviously.
And how about your own writing?
Yeah, well, I haven't had an actual book release since last summer with Impossible James, but I do have some things coming out in 2021. I sold a novella. It's a little early to announce specifically what's going on there, but that should be out in 2021. Possibly a second book too. And obviously, we started our chat by I've just been writing, spending my days at home writing, so I should have a nice backlog of stuff for the future by the time I have to go back to work.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, lovely talking to you. Really appreciate it.
You too, Leo. It's been great.
So there you go. More film chats from us in future, I'm very, very sure. If you would like to be on the show, if you want to tell me something about the show, you can always do so using losingtheplotpodcast@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, that's all my chat this time. Bye bye.